you've said it as a city that's blazingly public and intensively private at the same time. Yeah. Why does that make it a good setting? Tell us a bit more about why that makes it a good setting for crime fiction.
Well, I mean, it's self-evident, I think, that if it seems one thing on the surface, but there's all this other stuff happening behind the scenes, or you can imagine all this other stuff happening behind the scenes, then it's perfect for crime fiction. You know, people covering stuff up, people pretend to be what they're not, all kinds of scams, all kinds of double dealing going on. You know, I mean, many cities are like this. But Edinburgh physically has this Jekyll and Hyde thing going on, whereas, you know, the old town, which is quite chaotic in its design, there is no design, it was just kind of built as and when. And the new town, which was rational, it was a product of rational Edinburgh, it was a product of engineers and people of reason, and was built specifically because the old town was getting so decrepit and smelly and the upper classes didn't want to live there anymore. And there was a physical barrier between the two. There was the Nor Loch separating the two. So you got that split between the kind of rational and the chaotic. And interestingly, you know, there was Robert Louis Stevenson brought up in the one, you know, a family of engineers, very rational, living in a new town, but as a teenager, tiptoeing down the stone steps and out of the front door and up the hill to the old town, to sit in the taverns with the poets and the ragamuffins and the prostitutes and the dope smokers and whoever it would have been at the time. He was obviously attracted to that other side of life. So perfect for crime fiction, because, you know, crime fiction always comes down to why are people doing bad things to each other. And a book like Jekyll and Hyde attempts to explain that, I think. It attempts to explain why you can be rational 99.9% of the time, but for 0.01% of the time just go off on one. And I've interviewed people who've committed murders, and they often say that. They say cliche, but they say the red mist descended. I wasn't myself. You know, and that's where you start to see that they could get an idea of possession, of being possessed by some evil spirit or whatever, because it's like you're not you for a few seconds, and then the mist clears and you are you again. You think, Jesus, what have I done? But it's too late to do anything about it. And I mean, okay, you might say, well, that's an excuse that killers are going to offer up anyway. But you do get that, and often it is exacerbated by alcohol or drugs. And what is Jekyll and Hyde about? It's about someone who uses a potion to get back to a much more sort of base idea of humanity. And, you know, it's, on the one hand, it can be about creativity and about the creative artist and the kind of the schizophrenia of being a creative artist, but on the other hand, it really is about the effect booze has on the Scots. No doubt about it in my mind. And
after writing about it for 25 years, was it clear to you that when you started off with the complaints, that you still wanted to write about the city?
Well, I mean, I had carte blanche. You know, my publishers had said, although I think with a slightly tightened sphincter, Ian, you can write about anything you want, and, you know, here's a contract for 2 books, anything you want. And I said, a cookbook, no problem. I could see the beads of sweat, though. You know, historical novel, yeah, okay. Children's literature, yeah. Romantic, yeah, okay. And my wife said the same. She said, Ian, this is your chance now. You can escape from Rebus. You can do any kind of book you want. And of course, I sat down, and the book I wanted to write was about the credit crunch and the possible effects of the credit crunch. And I thought, crime novels. This is what I've always thought. You know, I get a theme, I get a question I want to explore. Can it be contained within the crime novel? Yes, it can. Is any form or genre better for doing it? Don't think so. So write another crime novel. So then, having retired Rebus, it's just to find another set of detectives who would allow me to ask questions about the credit crunch and about the effect it might have on Edinburgh. And the complaints just jumped out at me from a news story about an internal inquiry, I think somewhere in England, and it was just about these people being mentioned, and I thought, I don't know anything about these guys, but they seem to have quite a lot of power. You know, they're like spies within the police. So I went off and did some research into the Complaints and Conduct Department. Absolutely fascinating.